second week of Fourth and Goal with Tobin and Keiper. I am Keiper.
And I am Tobin.
All the pleasantries were included last week. If you want to hear all the thanks that we gave, all the props that I gave out to everyone that's helped us out, check out the video from last week. A little bit more unprofessional from us, but I mean, hey, it's the first time we've ever tried this. We're going to try to do better this time. Try to be on topic a little bit more. Try to not rant and rave and
go on 20 tangents.
And go on, 20 tangents. We're going to try to stay on topic as best we can to the best of our ability. I guess we'll start with the first thing. Week 7 in the NFL, and we only have 2 undefeated teams left.
First time since the Great Depression that there have been 2 teams in the same division that have been 6-0 at the same time.
Since the Great Depression?
Yeah.
I guess that was probably the most exciting thing that was going on. There were 2 undefeated teams in the same division. Yay!
One of them was Detroit. It was Lions and Bears.
I figured it had to have been either the Green Bay and the Bears or Chicago and Detroit. And we also have only 2 winless teams left, Jacksonville and Tampa. All the other winless teams by now have. Oh no, wait! I'm sorry. We're forgetting about the Giants. There's 3. See, literally, that's how bad it's become. I completely forgot that the Giants existed, and I just ruled them out of the league entirely. But no, there are 3 winless teams left. Last week, game that stood out to you, or performance that stood out to you, personally.
Personally, I was surprised with Kansas City's defense actually last week. They had 3 interceptions, 10 sacks. One of the interceptions was returned for a touchdown, and
most of that being in the second half.
Yeah, but they pretty much shut down Pryor, and I was not expecting that, considering how Pryor's been doing the past couple of games.
I'm actually very impressed with Terrell Pryor. It's borderline. I mean, he's not a rookie. I kind of view him as a rookie. I mean, obviously, because this is his first year playing. But, I mean, no one expects much from Oakland this year. I mean, really, they don't. But at least he's giving them something that they didn't have, which was sort of like that dynamic type of offense. I mean, originally, for the past 40 years, all Oakland has been is run the ball and streak routes.
That was out
fast. Just run fast. Just run fast. That was Oakland. Yeah. But now I think he gives them a little bit of something different. Maybe we won't see it translate into anything more than fantasy points for the next maybe 2 years until they start getting better players.
Oakland's not that patient, though.
I know Oakland's not that patient, and that's what's sad, is the fact that we're never going to get to see Terrell Pryor. We're not going to get to see him develop until way later, but like you said, the Chiefs just completely took him out of that game.
At one point, I was watching the NFL.com ticker, because the game wasn't televised, so I didn't stream it. It said 4th and 48, and I thought it was a mistake. But no, they actually at one point had 50 yards to go for a first down.
Yeah, like I said, I also didn't watch the game. I sort of just followed it on my laptop. And for a long period of time, Oakland led that game 7-0, and I saw that the Kansas City offense was struggling, and I thought, oh, well, maybe Tobin was right. Maybe they are, but then their defense proved that they're the best defense in the league, and they ended up winning. I have 2. The first one, and this is to bring up something that happened last week. Jerry Jones talking about how the Dallas Cowboys had a moral victory when they lost to Denver 48-51. He called it a moral victory.
There are no moral victories in the NFL.
I don't know about that, because what I'm about to say, I was very impressed with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That was the trappiest trap game in the history of trap games.
Yes.
And Peyton still won.
Yes. And for a period of time, it actually, going into the half,
they were booing.
Like, the Denver fans were booing the Broncos. And I mean, I don't know. Am I looking too much into it in the sense that Jacksonville just played a good game when they didn't really have anything to lose, or I don't know. I look at it in the sense that last week you asked me if I would take Jacksonville as 28-point underdogs, and I told you I would. If you took the line in that game, they won by like 12 points. They won by like 12 or 14 points. If you took
35-19.
35-19. So they won by 12 points. If you took them, because they were getting 28. 16. And then Math is not a strong suit of us. I'm surprised I got that right the first time. So I guess I'm impressed because that was the most we've seen Denver struggle against a team. And not only was it at home, but it was against the worst team in football. And I don't know. I'm not trying to take anything away from Denver. They still won the game, but that was the performance that I chose. Just Jacksonville coming out and Gus Bradley coaching so far the game of his life, and almost for a good 3/4 of that game really scaring some people in Denver and probably a lot of people in Vegas. Really just terrifying. And then the other one, I was actually going to choose the Kansas City defense before you chose it, but I'm going to stay with the defense, and I'm going to choose the Green Bay defense. And the reason why is because the first 2 weeks of the season, the Green Bay defense looked dreadful. I know they beat Washington week 2, but they still allowed RG3 to throw for over 300 yards and almost come back on them. And they just looked bad. And I thought going in after those first 2 games that, wow, this team's going to be completely carried by Aaron Rodgers. And going into the game in Baltimore, I thought that was going to be a shootout. I mean, I thought there was going to be 30 to 40 points scored up on either team, by either team. Because Baltimore's defense isn't that much to look at either. But, you have these guys. Clay Matthews had a good game. They're missing arguably some of their best players in their backfield. Jolly's playing well. NFL Network just did that documentary.
His road back from prison.
Yeah, his road back from prison, and he's been playing well. But those are the 2 individual performances that I think the play of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the play of the Green Bay defense. Now, aside from that, the game that everyone's talking about is the New England-New Orleans game. Because Brady became magical again for the first time we've seen in maybe, I don't know, 2 years or 3 years, that Brady's actually had a captivating performance.
Well, yeah, because, Brady being Brady the past couple years was, I'm done at halftime.
Yeah. Done at halftime, you run 50 plays in a half, and then he just sort of hands the ball off to Stephen Ridley and Shane Vereen. Not this year, but Stephen Ridley, Shane Vereen. Now it's LeGarrette Blount, who I don't even think should be on an NFL roster right now. But originally I had mixed opinions about that game because I didn't know who to award that game to. Do you award it to Brady, or do you pin it on the New Orleans defense?
No, you know who I pin it on? The New England defense. Because they forced 2 straight 3-and-outs from New Orleans when they could have just ran the clock out.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. I guess I'm not giving New England's defense enough credit. Maybe I'm not, just because of the sheer amount of injuries they have. I mean, we were gonna talk about that later on. Can New England potentially overcome all these injuries? But I mean, they were playing fairly well, and both defenses. I mean, the Saints defense, they sacked Brady 6 times?
Something like that.
5 or 6 times. Brady went straight. And, I mean, sometimes it was instant. I mean, I remember some plays that, he was down before he even got set. I mean, they were tearing through that offensive line, which is another concern that the Patriots have, I think, is that they don't have a very good offensive line like he normally has.
In that game, it looked like they needed to stop calling play actions.
Yeah.
Because
it wasn't working.
Even though they were running the ball okay, when Brady did the play fake, he turned around, he's getting hit.
Yeah. Which, I mean, give credit where credit is due. The same defense has been vastly improved this year. And whether you want to say that it was the defense's fault that they blew one play, granted it was the play that mattered most, I don't really want to pin that on the Saints defense. I kind of just want to award it to Brady because, I mean, you watch the majority of that game, none of those guys could catch. I mean, Dobson dropped how many passes? Amendola went out with it 2 or 3. Amendola went out with an injury again. Ridley had the best game of the season so far. He hasn't been very good this season. He had the best game so far, but they didn't get any production from any of the other running backs. And I mean, Kembrell Tompkins, everyone sort of made a big deal about him during the preseason that he was going to be this great receiver, and he really hasn't been that until that last drive. So
he made the game-winning catch, but that drive goes to calling.
Yeah,
Austin, I'm surprised he hasn't had a concussion yet. Calling.
Yeah, Austin, I'm surprised he hasn't had a concussion yet. Yeah, it's just, and Austin Colley's a good receiver. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's
a very good receiver
when he's not getting.
He can't. He just gotta keep his head up.
Yeah. So, I just think that's Brady being Brady. I think that's him, as he's done before, doing more with less than any other quarterback, honestly. Will that translate to something? We'll get to it, but as of right now, I mean, I'm not concerned with the Saints defense after that game at all. I'm really not. You sack Tom Brady 5 times, and I mean, for a good point, they were forcing 3 and outs by New England, and New England was running their traditional blur-esque offense, not huddling, running a play every 10, 15 seconds. I mean, that was, and as far as I'm concerned, that was an impressive showing by a defense from a team that is notorious for bad defense. Absolutely notorious for bad defense.
Yep.
So, I still think that they're a shoo-in for that division. If you really look at that division. I mean, Atlanta, I don't even think Atlanta has a player on offense left. Aside from Tony Gonzalez.
And Tony's on his last legs.
He is.
He's still better than half the tight ends in the NFL, but it's still Tony on his last legs.
He's better than more than half. I mean, you want to talk about the great tight ends in football, you basically, you start at Jimmy Graham, you go to Vernon Davis, and then maybe Gronk when he's healthy, but then after that you go straight to him. You go straight to Tony G.
I think Gonzalez and Witten trade.
Oh, well, maybe Gonzalez. Witten, to me, Witten's on a team that he's basically become like Mr. Checkdown in Dallas, I think, as opposed to Tony. Tony's like the red zone threat there. I mean, for God's sakes, he got triple teamed in the game against New England. Triple teamed in the red zone. That's absurd. He's an old man, and they're triple teaming him in the red zone.
He's that dangerous. But
I know he's that dangerous.
But no. Quick summing it up. It's Atlanta. They're pretty much losing. They're losing all the coin flip games, and the injuries are piling up.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to win it this year. Tampa Bay hasn't won a game yet this year, so they're probably out, and that leaves Cam Newton and the Panthers. And
I don't trust that offense.
They're not catching.
I don't trust Carolina's offense. I know they just hung, 30 plus points on
Minnesota.
I understand. I know they hung 38 points on Minnesota.
How many wins does the Panthers have?
2.
And who did they beat?
They beat Minnesota
and the
Giants. So
there you go. Those 2 powerhouses that combined for 1 win.
Yes, Minnesota was a playoff team last year. The Giants. I mean, the Giants are a perennial playoff team, I guess you can say, even though they didn't make it last year. Most people normally include them in the playoff picture. So, I guess you could say that the Carolina Panthers have beaten the two teams that were perennial playoff teams but have tanked this year. So no one's catching the Saints. No one's catching the Saints in that division. And then next year, because the same team can never win the NFC South twice in a row, Tampa will come back and win it for some reason. Speaking of which, Minnesota confirmed today that Josh Freeman will be the starting quarterback.
Well, after Matt House's performance, that was pretty obvious.
Yes. Does he do well in his first game? Because that did break today, so I do think we should bring that up.
It's against the Giants. He's going to look good, but that's going to be about it.
I think he performs well enough to keep the starting job, but I don't think they win. So, I don't know. Anyway, this week, we're going to get to this week, and let's talk about the game that I think is the only game important to talk about, and that's Peyton's return to Indianapolis. But before we even get to the game, there was a story that broke about the Colts owner, Jim Irsay, that you did not know about.
No.
Going into it, and that shocked me, because it's something that it sounds like something that I would make up as a smear campaign against Manning. It literally it doesn't even seem like Jim Irsay has the right to say it, but we'll get to that. I want to make sure I get this quote correct, because I don't want to misinterpret anybody that might be listening. That may also not know what happened. In an interview that Jim Irsay had, this was a couple days ago, he was asked about Peyton's time that he spent in Indianapolis and his opinion on whether or not they made the right move to take Andrew Luck. Because obviously Peyton has had 2 seasons now with the Broncos that he has put up fairly good numbers. We're not talking about the postseason right now. Talking about regular season solely. Putting together an MVP season this year. They asked him about it. This is the exact quote that Jim Irsay had when he was asked this. This is Jim Irsay. "We've changed our model a little bit because we wanted more than one of these." He then proceeds to flick his right hand, showing his Super Bowl ring. Okay. He then goes on to say, "Brady, as in Tom Brady, never had consistent numbers, but he had 3 of these." He then points to his ring again. "Pittsburgh had 2, the Giants had 2, Baltimore had 2, and we had 1. That leaves you frustrated. You make the playoffs 11 times, and you're out in the first round 7 of the 11 times. You love to have the Star Wars numbers from Peyton and Marvin and Reggie. Mostly, you love this." He then flicks his Super Bowl ring again. So
that's kind of a low blow.
So the question here is Irsay taking... Oh, and by the way, right after this broke and people started to really like grind him because of it and just awful things they were saying to him, he goes on Twitter and he says this. This is his rebuttal. This is him coming back on what he said. He says, "My comments meant if we gave Peyton better special teams and defense, we would have won more than 1 Super Bowl, instead of asking Peyton to do too much." Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Peyton was in Indianapolis, he had arguably the greatest kicker to ever play the game in Adam Vinatieri.
Twice, actually.
Twice.
Because he had Mike Vanderjagt, who was the most accurate kicker in NFL history before the Colts cut him.
Yes.
And then he had Adam Vinatieri.
So he's had pretty good... And I'm strictly talking about the kicking perspective, because that's... If Peyton can't score, then you have to worry about this guy scoring you points. Those are 2 of the most reliable kickers to ever play in history. So that's his special teams. His defense when he was in Indianapolis. As far as... From what I can remember... They were a feared defense.
No, let me explain to you the Colts defense from the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. You know how the Steelers defense goes the way Polamalu goes?
Yes.
That was the Colts with Bob Sanders.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
He's in there that was a decent to good defense. But when he was out, everyone was going off on him.
My memories of the Colts defense when Peyton was there was Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney wreaking havoc on almost everybody they played. And, like you said, Bob Sanders, who was a amazing safety at the time. I think he was one of the better safeties playing at the time, even though he sort of, like you said, didn't play that much. He was often injured. He was often fighting injury and stuff like that. They had decent linebackers. Not great. They had decent linebackers. Their defense was built to play with a lead. And so help you if you were a team and they were leading you. Because you were going to get completely steamrolled by that defense. Because Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney would tee off on you all game. And they were almost virtually unblockable. So to say that he didn't have a good defense, I think Jim Irsay's trying to cover his tracks. Because I think he had a good defense.
No. I think, based on what you said, he was taking his shot at Manning.
Absolutely.
That's Cavs owners level of.
No. See the cat.
Dan Gilbert level.
No.
LeBron
No. See,
level
Dan Gilbert went out and said he guaranteed a Cavs championship before the Heat won one. That is not the same thing as what Irsay is saying. Dan Gilbert threw down a gauntlet.
No, you're honestly saying he didn't. He basically called out Manning and told him, yeah, you know all those other teams you've been playing, you know your brother, Brady, Ray Lewis, and them, they're all better than you.
So my question is to you, what he was saying. And feel free, anyone that listens to this, feel free to say whatever you think. Is Irsay right in criticizing Manning for what he's criticizing him for, which is his postseason struggles, which are well documented? Well documented. If you take away the 2 years he went to the Super Bowl, he has a current record in the postseason of 9-11. Peyton Manning, okay, below 500. So if you take away the 2 years he went to the Super Bowl, he's only got, I want to say that's 4 games, 3 games. 4 games, 3 games. He's 2 wins. 2 wins, because you think the first year when they went in 2006,
that was 4 straight wins.
That was 4 straight wins. And then when they played New Orleans,
they were in the wild card round, so that was 3 straight wins. So that's 7. So he's 2-10 outside of his Super Bowl years.
Exactly. That's awful. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's terrible. That's terrible. So is Irsay necessarily wrong in criticizing Manning for it, or is he doing it too much? Is he going overboard with it and taking like a backhanded compliment?
Let me answer your question with a little hypothetical. This would be the same as if the Dolphins had sent Marino anywhere else in the 90s, and then the first time he came back, the Dolphins owner went, well, you know that guy Joe Montana, he has a few of these, and Dan doesn't. It's the same thing. The comparison's been made forever. The only difference between Manning and Marino is Manning's got a ring.
He's got one, yes. Granted, I mean, his play that year wasn't MVP-esque that year.
No, I mean, that defense that Irsay was talking about, they had it in 2006.
Exactly.
They stuffed the number 1 rushing attack in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
They took down a Baltimore team which in a game of field goals, so they out-defensed the Ravens, who were like 3rd in the league in defense going into it. And then they went and beat New England in New England. And that in 2006, that was Brady, like right on the right on the crest of
his 16-0 season.
His 16-0 season. That was the last game Brady lost before the Super Bowl the following year.
Yes. So, and then they went on to the Super Bowl to play the Chicago Bears, who, I mean, at the time were basically riding Devin Hester in special teams. Now, I understand they gave up the touchdown at the beginning of the game, but after that, you did not hear from Devin Hester for the rest of that game. So, the year they won the Super Bowl, they had a good defense. They had good special teams, and they won the Super Bowl. Not much changed from that team the years before and the years after. If anything, they should have gotten better because now they have the experience. My opinion is, I don't think Irsay is saying anything untrue, but I think the time in which he chose to do this, the time being right before Peyton comes back to play in Indianapolis against his second-year quarterback. Now, if the Colts lose that game, Jim Irsay looks like an absolute moron. He looks like an absolute idiot. He looks like a Dan Gilbert. Because Dan Gilbert threw down the gauntlet to LeBron James, and then LeBron James rolled into Cleveland and stomped them.
I watched that first game in Cleveland. Cavs took it to him for a while. But obviously, you know, the Heat are just the better team. I mean, there's only so much Hart can do.
Yes. So that was the issue I took with it. Not what Jim Irsay said, because I'm of the opinion of what Jim Irsay is saying is the same thing that numerous people have been saying, is that Peyton, for some reason, has not delivered in the postseason as consistently as Ben Roethlisberger, as Tom Brady, even as Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has been superb in the postseason when he's made it, aside from the times he runs into Pittsburgh when he plays them in the postseason. He seemingly can't get past them. But Eli, another one, Eli's his brother. There are guys, and they're the guys that Irsay decided to bring up, that don't have as consistent numbers in the regular season that Peyton does. But like Irsay said, they have more of, quote-unquote, these, obviously referring to the Super Bowl rings. So, my issue is not with what he said. My issue is when he decided to say it. Because now he really puts the Colts on the spot. More than they were before. I mean, this is like Andrew Luck's, like, coming out party. I mean, he gets to host.
This is like Rodgers Favre.
Yes.
One.
Yes. Absolutely. This is just like when Rodgers finally took over in Green Bay, and obviously.
And Brett came to town, and Brett won.
Yes. We'll get to whether or not I think that's going to happen, but I mean, I don't know. It raised this huge this stink, and then John Fox went on and obviously defended his quarterback, obviously, and sort of just said, "Oh, Irsay's picking on Manning, and Manning would never say something like that." Well, no crap. Manning cried when he left Indianapolis. There's no way he's going to talk bad about Jim Irsay. So we'll see. We'll see how it translates. We'll see what happens when Peyton rolls into Indianapolis.
All I know is 20 years ago, we're not having this conversation. If this situation happened 20 years ago, we're not having this conversation.
No. Owners have never been as public as they are now, and that's partially Twitter's fault. Jim Irsay is renowned for his candidness and his approach to social networking. He does it more than probably any other owner. So that part didn't shock me. What he said, though, when he said it, that shocked me. We said earlier that we were going to talk a little bit about New England and their injuries that they've suffered this year. Just to rattle off the list for you people, if you're not quite familiar with it, Danny Amendola went out last week with a concussion. Chances are he may not play. Knowing him, it's about 100% guarantee he won't play. Obviously, Vince Wilfork went out a couple weeks ago. He's out for the season. They put Gerard Mayo on IR with torn pectorals. Obviously, Gronk hasn't played yet this year. Tommy Kelly's out, their other defensive lineman. Aqib Talib went out last week.
He had a hip flexor.
He had a hip flexor injury. Those are sort of, with his age, I think that makes it more severe on him. I think, like Ray Rice had a hip flexor injury. He was out a week. I mean, we may not see Aqib Talib for another 2 to 3 weeks. So, that being said, with all the injuries on defense, with their inconsistent play on offense, their troubles with the offensive line that we talked about were very apparent against the New Orleans Saints. Are the Patriots still a contender in the AFC? And by contender, I mean potential representative of the AFC in a Super Bowl.
Yes.
You think they still are?
Well, let me break down where we stand right now. Basically, if the playoffs would end today, we would have Cincinnati, New England, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Colts.
Yes.
As the 6 playoff teams.
Mm-hmm.
All right. New England is not losing to Miami.
No.
Not happening. Cincinnati did beat them, but
it took a typhoon.
Yeah.
For them to stave off the Patriots. It literally, that game, the minute Giovanni Bernard fumbled, the heavens opened, and buckets started pouring on the Patriots. God did not want the Patriots to win that game. It seemed like. I mean, and then granted, obviously, the following week, Brady goes down and does the same thing he probably would have done on the Cincinnati Bengals, which was drive down the field and win the Super Bowl. Or win the game, I'm sorry.
The Colts, they're not ready for the big time. Andrew Luck is still 1 or 2 seasons away from breaking through that. So if they played in the playoffs, I would take Brady. Mm-hmm. The Broncos, it's Manning, Brady, basically.
And Brady has gotten the better of him the past few times they've played.
Yeah, pretty much. Then we have the Chiefs, which they're a great defense and all, but if Tom scores at all, I'm not sure Alex Smith can answer. And
it's a good point. The end game with the Chiefs is that depending upon who they draw, they might actually have to outscore somebody,
and they can't do that.
And I don't think they can do that. I mean, I guess it depends on the defense that they're facing.
Well, as of right now, I think they would go to Indianapolis.
Yes. Now Indy's
no. They would go to Cincinnati because Indianapolis is a 3.
Okay. You're correct. They would host because currently the way the NFL.com has it set up, they have Kansas City as the number 1 seed.
Really?
Yes. I think you have to go down to the 5th or 6th tiebreaker to break the tie between them and Denver because they've played almost remotely the same schedule. But they do have the Chiefs as the number 1 seed. Okay. So they would host. The only team they wouldn't play would be the Colts.
Yeah.
The only team that they possibly would. So their opponents would either be Denver, Cincinnati, or Miami. Now, if they played Miami, they could beat Miami, I think. I think hosting Miami, I think they could beat them. Cincinnati, that really depends on Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has not put together a good postseason regimen so far in his career. And then the other option would be, the Patriots would be a 2 seed.
Yeah, but
so then
they're getting whoever the Chiefs don't get, and they're winning in Foxborough.
Yes.
And Tom Brady is good enough that he can go into Arrowhead in January and come out with a win.
Yeah. So you're of the opinion that despite all these injuries, the Patriots can still get it together and win the AFC.
They won the Super Bowl when they had to have Troy Brown playing cornerback.
That is true. I didn't have them as a Super Bowl team this year before anything started. And I guess all the injuries should really reinforce my opinion.
But they're still winning.
Yeah, so I look at, like you said, all these other teams in the AFC have some glaring flaw about them.
The Dolphins can't get over the hump against the Patriots. The Colts are too young. Manning has trouble in the playoffs. The Bengals also have trouble in the playoffs with Andy Dalton. The Chiefs can't
score that many points. Now, I still am of the opinion that I think the Colts can make it. I think the Colts can get hot late, and they're just... It seems like the past few years, there's always that one team that you don't expect to make it in one of the conferences, and they end up making it. And I think the Colts are that team. But if you ask me, do you think the Patriots can make it now, even though prior to the season, when they had everybody, Gronk was expected to come back week 2, Danny Amendola was looking great in the preseason.
No. Danny Amendola was a ticking time bomb. I called him being injured. He's now out for the second time this season.
Okay, well, I know that. But, and then like I said, they had that big fuss about Campbell Tompkins. I didn't believe they were going to make it. But now they keep losing these guys over, and they keep winning games. I don't see how you can't choose them. I really don't. I can't imagine an AFC postseason that the Patriots aren't in the AFC Championship game. I can't envision it in my head currently. Maybe I'm giving Brady way too much credit. But, I mean, he lost damn near his whole defense. I mean, really. I mean, even Hightower, I found out. Hightower's been fighting injury. You know, like I said, we don't know how long Aqib Talib's going, but they lost Shane Vereen all season. Well, most of the season. So, while they're not my pick to make it, I still do think they can make it. And it really just depends on Brady in the end. Being Brady. I mean, and extending his remarkable postseason record of the most wins by a quarterback. So, well, that's kind of all we wanted to cover today. That's all we're really going to have time for. We're really cutting it short this time because I really do think an hour is way too long, and we rambled way too much.
We stayed on topic today.
We stayed on topic today, which
we're going to come in at around 45, 50 minutes.
We're going to come right around 45 minutes. But the first thing we're going to do before we sign off is what we're going to end with every week, which is our game picks. Last week
we both went 10-5. I did the math this morning.
You went 10-5.
Yeah.
That is because I also went, like you said, I also went 10-5. But the reason why is because you chose against Kansas City and against Pittsburgh, whereas I chose against Dallas and against the Saints.
You mean you chose against New England?
That's what I meant. I chose against New England and against Dallas. I seemingly can't pick Dallas to win a game. It seems that way. I don't think I've picked Dallas to win a game yet. Honestly, maybe I picked them to beat San Diego, but they ended up losing.
How did you not pick them against the Rams? That's like DeMarco Murray's favorite team to play.
he's only played them twice, but if you're gonna ask DeMarco Murray who he loves to play, damn it, he loves playing the Cowboys.
I think it was like Deion Sanders that said, we need to get him a visor that just makes him see Rams jerseys in the defense.
Yes, he'll rush for 200 yards a game every game. So we both went 10-6 this week, or last week, I should say. I was kind of upset about that because I was hoping I'd beat you.
So you can come in and
just so I can come in and gloat about the fact that my Steelers won and that your Chiefs that you have zero faith in also won. But my hatred towards the Cowboys and my
disbelief in New England.
In New England, yeah, it cost me last week.
All right.
But so we're gonna start it this week. Seattle at Arizona. I want you to go first on this one.
Seattle, because they're going to triple team Larry Fitzgerald and nobody else is going to get open.
I'm picking Arizona. I saw this game last week when I was watching the Giants-Chicago game, and I saw that game and I was like, I got a bad feeling about it. Seattle barely got by Tennessee.
Tennessee's a good defense.
At home, I understand that. Arizona's a better defense than Tennessee. They're better on the defensive side than Tennessee is from top to bottom, I think. And if the past few years have proven anything, it's that the NFC West teams play each other very, very hard. And I think Arizona, who is a good home team, Arizona's a good home team when they're playing in Phoenix. You can't disagree with that.
No, they are. They were better before they had the dome, because playing at Sun Devil Stadium was hard.
Yeah, because you
it was 110 in the shade. And
exactly.
You were in the direct sunlight.
Yeah. I'm going with Arizona. Upset pick. Upset pick of the week. I'm going with Arizona over Seattle. Tampa Bay over Atlanta. This is a surprising game that I don't really care about. This is actually I don't really care about this game, and that's sad. But I'm going with Atlanta because Atlanta's at home.
I have no faith in either of these teams right now, and I'm pretty much going the same reason, taking the home team, Atlanta.
I think you always have to take the if both teams stink, I think you always kind of have to go with the home team. Chicago at Washington. I changed my mind on this one about 3 times.
Who you got?
I originally went with Chicago, and then I changed my mind and went to Washington. But then I remembered that every single time I've picked Washington to win, they've lost. So I went with Chicago, and I'm sticking with Chicago.
I'm going to pick Chicago too. And it's simply because they can't do anything in the first half, and they kind of need to.
Mm-hmm. And this is a defense that, I mean, RG3 has not been doing well this season in the first half of games. And if you are turning the ball over in the National Football League a lot, and then you go up against the Chicago Bears,
that's like you're delivering a win on a silver platter.
Yes, you're delivering a win,
especially with the way RG3 holds that ball.
Yes. Dallas at Philadelphia.
Honestly, I'm going to pick the Cowboys, but I'm going to say Philly gets at least 20 points.
Week 1, I was watching the Washington-Philadelphia game with my younger brother. And before the game started, he told me that the winner of that game was going to go on to win the division. I'm picking Philadelphia. Nick Foles is going to have a huge game. That Dallas defense is terrible.
By the way, Nick Foles has had how many starts? 6. He's 2-0 against Tampa, 0-4 against everyone else.
But he hasn't turned the ball over yet.
Yet.
Six touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And he also has a rushing touchdown.
Against Tampa and the Giants, but continue.
Hey, win's a win, man. New England at the Jets.
That first game was ugly.
The first game was awful.
I'm gonna take New England here, because they won the first one.
I'm gonna take New England too. Geno Smith is still a rookie. I know he has bright spots. He might do well this game. I just don't think he's going to do well enough to stop New England. I don't think the Jets are there yet. Great defense, but they're not going to score points on New England. Buffalo at Miami.
Dolphins
coming off a bye week. Thad Lewis. No, I'm sorry. He had a great game last week, but
he's hurt.
Yeah.
I think they got Matt Flynn.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Matt Flynn. That actually makes me mad. Matt Flynn makes more money. Everyone, that story broke. Matt Flynn makes more money than Russell Wilson.
Well, he doesn't now. His contract.
Oh, yeah. He was making more money sitting on the bench in Oakland.
Yeah.
Than he was, 5 starting quarterbacks combined.
But that was because he was traded from Seattle to Oakland, and it was still the contract he got when he got the big bucks when they thought he was going to be the starter. But then Russell Wilson happened.
Yes. This is an interesting game. St. Louis at Carolina. Both coming off humongous blowout wins.
Honestly, this one I flipped the coin on, and I'm gonna go with the Panthers, and that's just because they have a running game. St. Louis really doesn't.
I'm gonna go with St. Louis. St. Louis just completely throttled Houston, and then had a bye week to prepare for Carolina. Carolina's streaky on offense, and I don't know. I see St. Louis as a team that going into it, some people had as a playoff team, and I think that this is one of those games that they win and it keeps them in the conversation. I don't think they will be there in the end, but they have to stay in the conversation. So I think St. Louis. Cincinnati at Detroit. And by the way, Calvin Johnson's playing. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Just so you know. Because last week we were... well,
no,
he's playing,
he was used as a decoy, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
He's going to be healthier this week, and I'm sticking with the Lions, and that's because...
Lions at home.
It's Lions at home, and Terrence Newman can't cover Calvin Johnson.
No one can cover Calvin Johnson. Maybe Patrick Peterson can, because Patrick Peterson's a big guy. But I'm going to go with Detroit. San Diego at Jacksonville. I've actually heard people say that this will be Jacksonville's first win. And by the way, for those of you that follow fantasy football, I don't know if you're, if any of you are in PPR leagues, Maurice Jones-Drew is projected to get 45 points in PPR leagues against the Chargers. But go ahead, San Diego and Jacksonville.
Chargers coming off a win. Jacksonville coming off their best game. They're probably not going to produce a similar effort against San Diego. Phillip Rivers throws like 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Chargers win.
Yeah, Chargers win. Keenan Allen. It seems like it's a different guy for San Diego every week. Keenan Allen was last week. They had Eddie Royal the first 3 weeks of the season. Antonio Gates has been huge.
Danny Woodhead beat the Cowboys by himself.
Yes. All right. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Houston at Kansas City.
This game depends. Who's starting?
Okay, let's...
You have to tell me, is Matt Schaub starting? Because that determines who I pick.
Matt Schaub will probably not start, I think.
It's TJ Yates?
I'm pretty sure it's TJ Yates.
Then I'm picking Houston.
You're going to... Yeah. So if Matt Schaub does play...
I would have picked Kansas City.
You'd have picked Kansas City. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be TJ Yates, so you're going to go with Houston. I don't care.
If the injury report comes out Friday or Sunday and it says if Schaub is starting the game, my pick automatically switches to Kansas City. I'm laying that out there.
Okay. I don't care who starts for Houston. I'm picking Kansas City, the loudest stadium in the NFL now. I don't know. I want that to be... I want proof of that.
They did. They did the same thing Seattle did. They hired somebody from Guinness Book of World Records to come and set it up, and when Pryor got sacked at the end of the game, they beat Seattle's record.
So that was the play. The final sack of Pryor was when they won, and they went over 137 decibels.
Yeah.
All right. San Francisco at Tennessee. There might not be a single touchdown in this game.
I was going to say Tennessee Tennessee is at home. I'm going to take Tennessee.
You're going to take Tennessee at home?
They have a slightly better defense at the moment.
Agreed, but Colin Kaepernick has to have a good game at some point. He has to. Colin Kaepernick has to get back to that form he had in Green Bay, and I think
at Green Bay.
At Green Bay, I think he does it. I think he has a decent game against, because then he'll have his breakout game next week against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But right now,
and then it'll be all like Eagle Vision again, and then
yes,
and everybody will be like,
yes. So I'm going with San Fran. Cleveland at Green Bay. Packers. Moving on. Oh boy. Okay. Baltimore at Pittsburgh.
This is it's gonna be ugly.
It's gonna be very ugly.
And I'm gonna take the Steelers, and that's because in this rivalry, since they got Joe Flacco, I've pretty much just taken the home teams.
Mm-hmm. I normally do that. I normally just take whoever's at home, and honestly, Baltimore-Pittsburgh games, I really don't care how either team is doing that year. You kind of throw the stats out the window. Take any offensive stats that they have, throw them out the window. It's not going to matter. On top of the fact that neither team is doing very well on offense, honestly, when you really look at it. But I am going to go with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's at home. A couple weeks from now when they play again on Thanksgiving, they're in Baltimore. That will probably be a completely different game. But right now, in Pittsburgh just got their first win on the road against the Hot Jets. Baltimore just lost at home on a close game. I'm going to go Pittsburgh. All right, this is the big game. The game that is probably going to be one of the most highly watched Sunday night NFL games in history. Denver at Indianapolis. Who do you have?
I'm taking the Broncos.
You're taking the Broncos?
Just for the reasons I stated earlier, this is basically going to mirror
Yep.
Favre-Rodgers 1, where Brett came into Green Bay and won.
I think that the only way that Andrew Luck is ever going to get this monkey off his back, the fact that he was the guy who had to replace Peyton Manning, the only way he's ever going to do it, he has to beat Peyton Manning.
So you're saying he's Steve Young?
Yes. You're drawing the comparison.
Who, by the way, didn't beat Joe Montana.
I know that. You're drawing the comparison between Favre and Rodgers. I'm drawing the comparison between Young and Montana. I think Luck beats Manning. I think Luck does the thing that he, believe it or not, this was a stat that I loved finding. In his first 22 games, Andrew Luck has 8 or 9, I think it's 8. 8 come from behind victories in his first 22 starts. In Manning's first 22 starts, he had 7 wins. I'm going to go with Luck. Luck gets number 9 on Peyton this week. He's going to drive him down the field. He's going to beat him in the end. Last game. We go from that amount of excitement to this. Minnesota at the Giants.
Oh boy.
That's our Monday night closer.
Can we flex it? Can we get someone else in there?
It's ESPN, probably not.
I'm gonna take the Giants on principle. Even though Eli has historically had trouble with Minnesota, I'm taking the Giants to get their first win.
The Giants have to go 9-7.
So they're rest of the way 9-1.
The Giants have to go 9-7. It's in Tom Coughlin's contract. He has to go 9-7. So I'm gonna go with the Giants. All right, that's it. We still cut about 9 minutes off. I think our picks took a little bit long, but we had to do a little bit of explaining. There was a little bit of some build up.
We're at about 52 minutes. Last week was an hour and 7.
Yeah, about an hour. So we carved off about
15.
About 15 minutes. So we're gonna keep working on it. Hope you guys are enjoying listening. I'm Keiper.
I'm Tobin.
And we'll see you next week.